Hi everyone, this is Learning with Linda, and today I bring you another update regarding Social Security. And so this update pretty much applies for those in all 50 states. Guys, there's a new chance of a government shutdown happening this coming week that could affect millions of Americans. And in this video, we're going to be discussing what it means for those who receive benefits regarding Social Security, SSI, and even SNAP. On to another topic, we're also going to be covering two presidential candidates that want to eliminate Social Security benefits for the wealthy. And of course, I want to hear from you. Let me know whether this is something you agree with or disagree with. And as always, please make sure you stay until the end of this video to ensure that you receive this information. Now, before we get started, if you're interested in the latest news regarding stimulus, child tax credit, SNAP, p-ebt, and everything in between, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below. Now let's get right to it. So let's start off talking about the government shutdown. And of course, in this video, we're going to be covering everything you need to know. Now, guys, there is a deadline that pretty much the government must meet in order to not have this government shutdown happen. And of course, we all know now the government has several duties and, it could affect several benefits if it were to happen. So here, I also want to give you some details as to what the government is actually doing. So for example, the House Republicans look to pass a two-step package to avoid partial government shutdown. And then also, I've also done some research regarding benefits, right? How this could potentially affect those, again, who receive SNAP, SSI, or even Social Security. So for example, here it says federal government begins initial communications to agencies on possible shutdown. Now, one important date we must all keep in mind would be the date of November 17th, since this is when possibly another government shutdown could be coming, guys. So first off, what is a government shutdown? Many federal government agencies and programs rely on annual funding appropriations passed by Congress. So pretty much every year, Congress must pass and the president must sign budget legislation for the next fiscal year, consisting of 12 appropriation bills, one for each appropriations subcommittee. Now, this is pretty much what's happening. Congress has not yet enacted any of the 12 bills for fiscal year 2024 that make up the discretionary spending budget. Now, in a quote-unquote shutdown, federal agencies must discontinue all non-essential discretionary functions until new funding legislation is passed and signed into law. So essential services continue to function, as do mandatory spending programs. Now, if a government shutdown were to happen, here's pretty much how it could or could not affect your SNAP benefits. So those funding for the SNAP program is mandatory. The ability to send out food stamp benefits could be affected by a shutdown, since continuing resolutions have generally only authorized the Agriculture Department to send out benefits for 30 days after a shutdown begins. Now, guys, I've done some research here, and if you guys remember, there was actually a government shutdown between 2018 to 2019, and pretty much what happened was that the USDA paid February SNAP benefits early on January 20th, which was just before the 30-day window ended, but it would have been unable to pay March benefits had the shutdown continued. So in addition to this, during any shutdown, stores are not able to renew their EBT card licenses, so those whose licenses expire would not be able to accept SNAP benefits during a shutdown. And of course, many of us want to know what would happen to our Social Security and even SSI payments if there were to be a government shutdown again on November 17th, right? So while a shutdown would disrupt some government services, Social Security and SSI payments are not at risk. This is according to experts. Social Security and SSI recipients were paid in full during previous shutdowns. That was said by David Camp, interim CEO of the National Organization of Social Security Claimants Representatives. Now, claimants can still communicate with Social Security, at least to the extent that they can on a normal day. If Congress doesn't pass a budget or if the continuing resolution expires, then the U.S. Treasury already has authorized to keep sending out checks for entitlement programs like Social Security and SSI. This is something that was said by Jennifer, a professor of political science at the University of Richmond. Now, when it comes to SSI and Social Security benefits, that already counts as like mandatory spending for the government. Congress doesn't have to go back to the government and ask them to please pay SSI, right? It kind of just happens automatically. However, in a case of a quote-unquote default, the scenario could be different. Now, if the U.S. defaults on its obligations, which almost happened earlier this year, Social Security recipients could see their checks delayed. This is according to experts. Now, of course, that could pose a financial hardship for many beneficiaries, especially the millions who rely on Social Security as their main source of income. Now, let me explain to you guys why we're finding ourselves in this situation where another government shutdown could be happening on November 17th. So if you guys remember, back on September 30th, Congress had not yet passed or finished with the 12 appropriation bills it needed to pass to fund the government, again, through September 30th. So what it did in contrast to that is that it passed a temporary funding bill on September 30th to basically give it more time. But then shortly afterward, a small group of House hardliners ousted then Speaker Kevin McCarthy over the deal, which kicked off a 3-week leadership fight that ended in the election of Republican Mike Johnson on October 25th. Then the two parties did not agree on the top line 2024 spending figure. Democratic President Joe Biden and McCarthy in May set a $1.59 trillion discretionary spending budget, but hardline Republicans then pushed for an additional $120 billion in cuts. Now, another problem we must keep in mind is that also the United States recorded a nearly $1.7 trillion deficit in its most recent fiscal year, which is the largest since a budget got fueled by the COVID pandemic. So let's talk about what's next, right? Democrats and Republicans in both chambers will continue negotiations on finding a path forward ahead of the deadline. I mentioned previously it would be November 17th in the hopes of averting a shutdown. So here's the latest update as to what the U.S. Congress is doing pretty much to prevent a government shutdown. Now, Congress has until Friday night to keep the government funded. The House pretty much plans to vote on its short-term funding bill as early as Tuesday. House Republicans are pursuing a two-step plan for funding the government. And so here's pretty much the breakdown of this. The first bill, right, again, it's a two-part. So the first bill would extend funding until January 19th, and then would include funding for military construction, veterans affairs, transportation, housing, and then also the energy department. The second part of the bill, which I mentioned previously, it's a two-step plan, which would extend funding until February 2nd. This would include funding for the rest of the government. Now, guys, another thing to keep in mind here is that neither bill includes additional aid for Israel or Ukraine. Now, on the other hand, which is the Senate, which is obviously being controlled by Democrats, lawmakers are trying to come up with an alternative stopgap proposal. Now, because of the Senate rules, any plan will require 60 votes to pass, necessitating bipartisan support. So senators have largely remained quiet as they wait for House Republicans to unveil a proposal. In remarks on the Senate floor Thursday, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York said the only way forward was through bipartisan cooperation. Now, Schumer started the process that would allow the Senate to move to a spending bill sometime next week if they have one ready for consideration on the floor. Now, moving on to a different topic. I mean, it still has everything to do with Social Security, but these articles kind of make me wonder, whether our stance should be on wealthy people receiving Social Security or not, right? So I did find this news article from Yahoo Finance. It's called, "Is Eliminating Social Security for the Wealthy a Viable Option? Two presidential hopefuls think so, and they pretty much give you some details as to why. I also found this other news article from Market Watch. It says rich people should not be collecting Social Security. So very interesting. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now, two presidential candidates that pretty much want to eliminate Social Security benefits for the wealthy are former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley and then also former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. And they pretty much reiterated their view that Social Security benefits should be eliminated for wealthy retirees, which again, they said it on the Wall Street Journal, and they reported that this would mark a major philosophical change in a program that was designed to be near universal, meaning everyone should be able to receive Social Security benefits. Now, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie had a message for Warren Buffett and anyone else considered ultra wealthy. You're wrong to claim Social Security benefits. Now, the fact is on Social Security was established to make sure that no one would grow old in this country in poverty, and that is what we have to get back to. This was something that was said by Christie. Rich people should not be collecting Social Security. Now, the second Republican presidential candidate, Haley, her views were also laid out in her presidential candidacy economic program, in which she noted, "We'll keep these programs the same for anyone who's in their 40s, 50s, 60s, or older, period. And we'll preserve Social Security and Medicare for the next generation. I'll limit benefits for wealthy people," is something that she said. Now, Social Security, as we all know, is facing an insolvency issue. Guys, if Congress doesn't act, then the trust funds that support the program's retirement, disability, and even survivor benefits will run out of money in 11 years. And this is according to the trustees report released earlier this year. So that's pretty much why these two Republican presidential candidates want to eliminate Social Security benefits for the wealthy. Again, let me know your thoughts. And that is all the updates that I have for today. Remember to turn on your notification button to know when I have uploaded a new video. See you guys next time.